Joining me now is Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm cognizant of the fact that you've spent your life in public service, a big chunk of it in the military. What's it like for you to wake up this morning and after 20 years, for the first time in 20 years, to have no U.S. troops in Afghanistan?
Yeah, I think we're all still processing that, John, to be honest with you. I mean, it is something that for 2 decades we've all been connected to without question. And I think it's going to take time for every veteran to sort of process this on their own. What I can tell you is here at the Pentagon, there's a mixture of relief that we were able to get everybody out safely in those last few hours, all the last remaining 800 troops, and that we were able to evacuate 6,000 Americans and 123,000 total people out. But there's also concern, obviously, over the ones that we couldn't get out, that time and space and the security threat simply wouldn't allow us to reach. Although we don't think the numbers are large, we're still obviously concerned about our allies and friends and fellow American citizens that are still there.
And I want to come back to those 100 to 200 American citizens who might still be there in just a moment. First, though, it's a picture that we've been showing this morning from the LA Times of the Taliban walking through a hangar at the Hamid Karzai airport. Fully armed Taliban looking like they're wearing American gear, carrying what looked to be American guns, looking at American equipment. I wonder what these images, again, what's the takeaway here? If at any point in the last 20 years I had said to you that there would be Taliban fighters inspecting U.S. helicopters inside an evacuated hangar, how is that anything other than a U.S. defeat?
John, I would tell you that they can inspect all they want. They can look at them, they can walk around, but they can't fly them. They can't operate them. We made sure to demilitarize, to make unusable all the gear that is at the airport, all the aircraft, all the ground vehicles. The only thing that we left operable are a couple of fire trucks and some forklifts so that the airport itself can remain more operational going forward. So I think we're not overly concerned about these images of them walking around. But again, we did everything we could to make sure that that equipment couldn't be used by them going forward. And as for the defeat narrative, John, I mean, the historians will write they'll write the chapters here. What I can tell you is that we prevented Afghanistan from ever becoming a safe haven for an attack on the United States again. And in the process, U.S. forces, coalition forces, our NATO allies, and our Afghan partners made a lot of progress in that country. Progress which is now going to be up to the Taliban to see whether they're willing to continue or not. They have made promises, and now the United States government, the international community are going to hold them accountable to those promises.
You said prevented an attack on the United States from Afghanistan. There was an attack in Afghanistan on Americans last week. Obviously, 13 U.S. service members died, and there are still 100 plus, give or take, U.S. citizens in Afghanistan who want to get out. So what is your current assessment of what threat they might be under?
There is no question that the threat environment in Afghanistan remains high. And certainly we obviously are concerned about the potential for Taliban retribution going forward. And we certainly, and we saw it ourselves, are mindful of the threat that ISIS-K continues to pose inside Afghanistan. As General McKenzie said yesterday, the Taliban is now going to reap what they sow when they release these ISIS-K prisoners, and they're going to be struggling against an ISIS-K threat. What I can tell you is that we're going to, as a government, we're going to stay mindful of our commitment to the remaining American citizens, and we don't believe there's very many, and to our Afghan allies to hold the Taliban accountable for their promises of safe passage. It's not going to be their words, it's going to be their deeds, and we have a lot of tools available across the government to do that.
I know that's the promise, but President Biden at one point promised that U.S. troops would stay until all American citizens who wanted to get out got out. And there are still American citizens there, and U.S. troops are gone. So if the military assesses that these 100 plus Americans are under imminent threat, what's the military prepared to do about it?
Our job is to provide options to the commander-in-chief, but it's not to make policy. And I think I just leave it right at there, John. What I can tell you is we have other tools available to us as a government to help the safe passage of Americans get out of that country or any other country. It's not totally unlike the ways we try to move American citizens who are stranded or in danger and peril out of other countries around the world. We have lots of tools available to us. I don't foresee a military role at this time, but of course that's going to be a decision by the Commander-in-Chief. What I can tell you is that we're going to remain committed to getting them home as fast and as efficiently as possible. Though the military mission has ended, the United States commitment to them has not.
So when people say America's longest war is over, is it?
Yes. Yes, it is. There are no American troops anymore in Afghanistan. The military mission, the war itself is over.
No matter what happens to the 100 Americans still there?
John, I don't want to get into speculating one way or another. We don't see a military role here in helping these last individuals getting out. And obviously our job is to provide the president options, but I don't foresee that that's an option right now that is going to be needed. Again, we're focused on making sure we meet our commitment to them. The other thing, John, that I'd like to add is just to remember that 6,000 Americans did get out safely, yes, and 123,000 other people, mostly Afghans, vast majority are Afghans. So we did meet a measure of our promises and our commitments to Americans who wanted to get out and to Afghans who wanted to get out. And I just don't think that that should be overlooked.
It's a remarkable achievement. There's no question the number of people who were removed from the country over an incredibly short period of time, it is impressive. There are questions about whether or not it could have begun sooner, correct?
There's going to be all kinds of time to do the forensics on this, John. What I can tell you is that we had been planning for non-combatant evacuation operations all the way back to the spring, back to April. It was something on the plate, and Secretary Austin pre-positioned forces well before the Taliban had been making their moves on the provincial capitals here in early August. Well before that, he decided, weeks before that, to pre-position forces in the region closer to Afghanistan in case we were going to need them. And I would remind everybody that, you know, we went in the span of 48 hours in mid-August. We went from believing we had an Afghan government who was a longtime ally and a partner that we could rely on, and Afghan forces, within 48 hours to having to develop a pragmatic relationship with a longtime enemy, the Taliban, in order to effect these evacuations. I'm not at all discounting our concern over those that didn't get out and those that are still there. We absolutely share that concern, and we're heartbroken that we couldn't get everybody. But in the span of less than 20 days, to be able to move out more than 120,000 people safely, mostly Afghans, I think is a remarkable achievement by the Pentagon and by our State Department and by our coalition allies too.